assigned to the card. The human annelid hybrids grow more sophisticated.
So last week we took a look at System Shock 2, definitely a game that shows its age, but also a game that had a lot of influence on the genre and industry in general. It wasn't until 2007 that Ken Levine and his team Irrational Games released BioShock, a so-called spiritual sequel to System Shock 2, running on the Unreal 2 engine and developed for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and of course Microsoft Windows. In the game's opening, you're a seemingly innocent person on a plane which crashes in the middle of the ocean. You survive the wreckage and come across a mysterious light tower that takes you to a city deep underneath the sea. Welcome to Rapture.
I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Rapture.
From the get-go, it becomes apparent that something is very, very wrong here, and with nothing but a wrench for defense, you soon find yourself guided by a man named Atlas, as you attempt to reach higher ground and figure out just what the hell is going on. Now, anyone who spoils BioShock's plot for you kind of deserves to have their tongue ripped out, because the twist, which occurs about 2/3 through the game, is masterful and something I doubt anyone saw coming. But even long before this, BioShock is riveting stuff with fantastic level design and set pieces that tick all of the boxes. It can be a little bit juxtaposed how the story takes itself so seriously in the same world where people have put superpowers in vending machines. So you kind of have to go into this with an open mind. The first sort of 30 minutes of BioShock is really one of the single most incredible openings I've ever seen in a first-person shooter, if not video games in general. Not only does it set the atmosphere and tone for the rest of the game, but it also eases you into all of the mechanics and controls in a seamless way. Within the first level, you learn the basics of plasmids, one of the game's most crucial skills, and tonics, which are your passive skills. As well as this, you also learn some simple tactics against enemies, and you're also introduced to the main antagonist and your so-called allies.
So tell me, friend, which one of the bitches said to you?
The main enemies in Rapture are splicers. These are people that have been playing around with plasmids too much and ended up deformed and going batshit insane. They do little more than talk gibberish whilst idle before trying to kill you on sight. By the end of the second level, you've got your hands on a few more plasmids, weapons, and you're probably stocked up well on cash and other items. Now, few games have such a stellar opening, and this is a testament to BioShock's level design. This is a world that feels genuine and believable, and even something as simple as a corpse on the ground tells its own story. Someone wrapped around a cash register with loose bits of change near them suggests a robbery gone bad, and a bloodied and beaten body in a bathroom stall shows hints of outright murder. Every element in the game world oozes with detail, character, and charm, from the jingles of vending machines through to the mutterings of splicers as they scavenge around the ruins of the city, giving you insight into the events that led them to where they are. Water constantly seeps through leaky ceilings and broken pipes as the ocean seems to be finding its way back into the city. And all of this is crafted quite incredibly within the limitations of the Unreal 2 engine. Aside from a few shoddy character models and an abundance of visual effects, overall it looks pretty damn good. Throughout the entire game from start to finish, these little details are always prevalent, and it's the kind of thing that really brings the game to life, much like the way it did in System Shock 2.
Oh God, you sick fuck, let me out of there!
Speaking of which, BioShock shares more than a few similarities with System Shock, and it really does do justice to the phrase spiritual sequel. The first area takes place in a medical facility, followed by a hydroponics and recreation level, as well as one set in a large shopping area. Psionics are replaced with plasmids, and turrets and cameras can once again be hacked. And there's also multiple ammo types which work for better or worse against certain enemy types. Instead of researching the remains of enemies, you now photograph them with a film camera to learn their weaknesses, though this does function a little bit differently. It's not as tedious as having to run around to a multitude of chemical storerooms, but it's still tedious all the same. Lastly, there is somewhat limitless ways you can build your character up with plasmids and tonics. Plasmids are generally used to assist you more than outright replace straight up shooting. A lightning blast, for instance, may look and sound good, but its main focus is to stun an enemy, allowing you to run up and finish him off with a whack from your wrench. Plasmids can also have a profound effect on the environment in certain situations. A puddle of oil can be lit up with the incinerate plasmid, for instance, whilst the lightning blast can be used to jolt enemies standing in a pool of water. Different plasmids have different effects, with some of them being questionably useful, but I don't think there's an outright wrong or bad plasmid, and will just come down to your playstyle more than anything else. BioShock is a lot more action-orientated than its predecessor, however, with ammo always being in plentiful supply, even giving the player the ability to craft their own at something called U-Invent machines. But the main thing BioShock does differently than System Shock is the so-called inclusion of moral choices for the player to make on how you treat NPCs called the Little Sisters.
Stay away from her, or it is you who will be shot next.
Easy now, Doctor. He's just looking for a wee bit of Adam. Just enough to get by.
So the Little Sisters are little girls turned into lab experiments who are able to harvest the substance called Adam from corpses around Rapture. Adam is kind of the be-all and end-all and is the main currency you'll be using to upgrade plasmids and purchase new tonics. So the Little Sisters are pretty important in the overall picture. Adam is in somewhat short supply, but you should still have more than enough to get the plasmids you need by the end of the game, and you'll probably be spending points into things out of curiosity more than necessity. Early on in the game, you're introduced to the Little Sisters, their function, and also the Big Daddies, who protect them from would-be attackers. Getting rid of the Big Daddies allows you to either rescue or harvest them, with each method giving you a different amount of Adam. Now the choice here is, do you save these little girls or flat out murder them? Now this isn't exactly moral choice per se, as it's so black and white.
Thank you, mister.
The choice is either are you a normal human being or a complete fucking psycho who kills kids. What I enjoy more is taking on the Big Daddies that are protecting them. The Big Daddy fights can be really tense and brutal at first, but the further you get into the game, the more easier they become, as you get over-equipped and can easily outmatch the slower and more cumbersome opponent. You can also use certain weapons to exploit them and stun lock them until their health is totally drained. Now that's not to say that this is a bad thing, but it does remove the tension somewhat. On the flip side, whilst Big Daddies become a pushover, your standard splicers turn into goddamn superhumans. They soak up bullets and explosives like it's nothing, and generally are able to shrug off most attacks and plasmids like it's little more than a minor nuisance. This is a game that you kind of have to play on the highest difficulty because it's really too easy otherwise, but regardless of what setting you're on, these guys will kick your ass in the last few areas. Even if you're using the right ammo type or the most powerful weapons, it is still a slow and tedious process to take them all on. And when you've got half a dozen of the assholes shooting at you, your health bar drops off in seconds. It even gets to a point where using your wrench is more damaging than a grenade launcher or shotgun. But I think the game's main complaints come from things it's lacking in regards to System Shock 2. I mean, it really is sort of a dumbed down version of that game if you really break it down. Swapping out skills and abilities can now be simply done by walking up to the right vending machine and dragging and dropping them around as you please. No longer are you forced to stick to a particular playstyle, which does make things seem a little bit more casual. The inventory screen has been replaced with, well, nothing. Now when you pick up an item, you automatically use it instantly. Now I don't see this as that much of an issue because most items are either incidental health increases or things like currency or ammo that you'd want to hang on to anyway. Some people also complained about the Vita Chambers, which respawn you nearby when killed, despite the fact that System Shock 2 also used this same mechanic with something called the Bio-Reconstruction Machines. Lastly, all of the quest markers and objective hints along with the Vita Chambers can be switched off in the options menu, kinda making these complaints redundant. Now that's not to say that BioShock is without fault, it's got all manner of physics problems and issues with the shooting and hit detection. Hacking into turrets and other machines is done through a little minigame which bizarrely just kinda puts everything on hold whilst you spend 30 odd seconds completing it. This is weird because of how it unnaturally pauses everything around you, but also because it kills the pace of the game, especially in the later levels where machines are abundant and you're constantly stopping to spend 30 seconds here and there hacking the damn things. Also, the last level can just go and screw itself, but really most of the faults you're going to hear about seem to be from people fond of arcade gameplay and not so fond of the game's somewhat consoleization more than BioShock on the whole. Regardless, I don't think that anyone would argue that BioShock creates a believable and engaging game world with numerous ways to interact and play around with all of the elements. It really still is a great game if you can find yourself invested in the story, and when stacked up amongst the sequels, I think it easily stands above the rest. Ken Levine may really be something of a hack these days, but back then he really delivered the goods. So, would you kindly go and check this game out?
And with that, farewell, or das Vidania, whichever.